Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just like you said, the implementation is the MVP, so
Hmm.
we just need to go fast, 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 and all of the work comes after the go live. But then after the go live, people just go back to their job, and then
And then
any
they
problems,
forget about it. One of the posts I had was like, HRS is not a drive-through. And I feel this wholeheartedly.
Hey Danielle, welcome to Ask an Expert podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fine, thank you. We're Friday, so great day. Tomorrow is the weekend. I've had a very busy week, so very happy to have a chill conversation with you today.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. For the people who don't know you, because you kind of emerged from the darkness like three
Yeah.
months ago on LinkedIn. For the
Came
ones
from
who
nowhere.
don't, yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
For the ones who don't know you yet, introduce yourself just a little bit.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the ecosystem for about 8 years now. I'm currently a director of people systems and technology. I work for a tech firm right now. And I really lead the overall strategy for about 40 different countries. I lead the team that handles the configuration, the design, the governance, really all around just trying to create tech enabled leadership. So it's been really exciting. My background is in IPO, M&A, optimization. So it's really fun. It's really fun to be here. As you guys saw, yes, I just kind of came from nowhere, but really I've been working in the industry for a long time. It's just recently I saw the power of LinkedIn and what it means to be able to share with other people and the different insights. So it's been really fun. I've had a lot of people reach out to me to be a mentor and to kind of teach them some different things that I've learned and I've learned from them as well. So absolutely love that platform for the industry.
Yeah, and for the ones who don't know, like I scroll LinkedIn every day, and I mostly know all of
Doom
the
scroll.
like let's say like Workday influencers. But then when I started seeing your content, I was like, I'm not sure. Like I know this
Is she
Danielle.
real?
Yeah, is she real? AI
What country
agent
is
or
she
whatever.
in? Where's she coming
But
from?
but then I started reading your posts, and it's not the usual generic advice or the generic posts that I usually see on LinkedIn. Like there's a deep sense of knowledge, and that's why I decided to reach out because like it's real, right? And so,
Yeah.
how long have you been in the ecosystem to have like all of the plethora of experience?
Yeah, I've been here. So I've been in HR for about 8 years now, and then
Okay.
7 of it's Workday.
Was it by luck that you like jumped
Oh,
from
that I
HR to
hopped into it.
Workday, or yeah?
Not, I wouldn't say it was really luck. It was pretty meticulously planned, but I had worked in HR. I had an operations background. I worked for Lifetime Fitness and we led the time tracking initiatives, the recruiting module, and opened them up at a really large scale. It was 30,000 employees. So I moved into an operations role that really set me up for success. When I got there, honestly, we were just dealing with a lot of different layoffs and constant changes. And I had to pick up the phone one day and I had a hard HR conversation. And that was kind of the it for me, is it wasn't my passion anymore. So after we had the hard conversation, there was an open job in HRS. And I decided to apply for it. It was a little bit of a lateral move in a way. I didn't know what my shots were because we had a hiring freeze, but I put my name in the hat either way. And I ended up getting to the interview. I had no configuration experience at all, but I was so confident in my ability to be able to figure it out and be able to handle the different modules that I had touched in my other company, but I didn't configure. I ended up getting chosen and I was able to fast track my career because my manager had left, the senior analyst left as well, and it was me and one other person managing the whole system. So I actually had to take on the duties of an HRS manager within 6 months of being a brand new analyst. So they put me
Quick
through like
question on that.
five. Yep.
How did you pitch yourself to get the job without configuration experience? Because I get this question a lot.
Yeah, I'm working with a couple of different people on this.
Nice.
I went into it and I framed it as I had a solid HR and operations background. So I knew how to problem solve. I knew how to work the technology. I didn't necessarily know how to configure it, but I knew the policies around it. I knew how to talk to stakeholders.
Hmm.
And testing, I was a part of that as well. Once you kind of know that different framework, going in and editing business process, that's the easy part about it. So
Sure.
I was able, and I had the attitude of I will figure it out either way. But if you go into an interview and you're like, yeah, so I don't have configuration experience, and that's what you lead with, that's your narrative. That's what everyone's going to hear, and they're not going to hire you. So I was
Hmm.
working with someone recently, actually. She has a solid HR background, but she doesn't have the deep configuration experience. So we helped frame her in a way that would sell her for the position. And she was already getting calls for senior analyst jobs with really no configuration. But she knew the life cycle of technology and how you test something and how you build it and design it and you work with other people. That all is the hardest part, I think.
Yeah, I have this conversation so often. I think it's easier to have that HR background and learn how to configure rather than being an expert at configuring but not knowing why you're configuring uh, this and that and knowing the policies, etc. So totally get it. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think it will be very beneficial for a lot of people in my DMs at least.
There's still
So
hope. You don't have to have the expertise to get to land the job, to be honest.
tell me then, okay, you got the job 6 months after it, you were doing the job of an HRIS manager, and then what's next?
Mhm. I kept moving. So I decided to actually leave. And it had to do with the fact, to be honest, being a woman in technology, I dealt with a lot of retaliation.
Hmm.
And I was paid significantly lower than male counterparts, even though I actually had more expertise. Yeah. So I
Shit,
kind of
okay.
went through the whole life cycle of that, which is a part of my story. And it's probably, why I have the voice that I do on LinkedIn, the very bold, blunt personality. I transitioned and then I went to a different company and we prepared for an IPO. I moved right into I was an HRS analyst and within a year I was a senior analyst. So
Nice.
I
Okay.
kept moving. I convinced every single company to invest like $10,000 in my training and I eventually like went through 20 different Workday courses at the end of it.
I love it. I love hearing that kind of story because there are thousands of HRIS analysts, but they don't all have the same career. And it just proves that
Yeah.
you own your story and then you own the rest of your career as well. Like you've made those decisions of having those hard conversations, making them invest in you, and then, just climbing the ladder this way. Love that.
Yeah, I mean if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to?
True. Okay. Perfect. And then, so more about what you do today then. From all of this experience, you were, I think you remember in our first conversation, you were like an individual contributor. Right now, you're managing a team. What's the main difference, or what are the additional responsibilities that you have today versus a few years ago?
Well, the entire there's so many different pillars. So one of them when I think you go from an IC role to a people leader is just because you're an expert does not mean you should be a manager. And
Hmm.
this one took a long time for me to really get. But what I mean by that is I had this persona of being the closer. That was actually my nickname because I would close so many projects by myself. And it was like me, 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 me. And when you have a team, it is not about you anymore. It's about how
Hmm.
you empower other people to have their own personal brands and to live through that. So I took a lot of pride in being fast and thinking quickly. And I would get requested to stand up a whole literally performance module, and I would do it within an hour and I would time myself on projects because I was just so good at being fast. And then when I became a manager, because I think the natural progression is okay, I'm really great. So I think, right?
Hmm.
I think I should be a manager, right? Like that's typically the life cycle of it is let me step into management. And I did because we had some turnover occur kind of throughout my career. I moved into that manager role after being really just the expert. And what I had to learn is that like not everyone's motivated. Not everyone actually wants to do their job.
Hmm.
Not everyone
Yeah.
cares about it being perfect. And at first, I was a micromanager. And then I really evolved and I became about like empowering my own team and I had to let go of a lot of control.
Hmm.
And it was more about really just I didn't want people to have dependence on me. I wanted them to feel empowered so I could take a Friday off because I think if you are that leader that just does everything, well, you're going to set your company up to fail. So it's really that's kind of the main thing to move into that role, but also it's just you've got to learn how to trust people versus kind of controlling them. So you've got to shift the dynamic of your team and build them up to a point where they are so confident in their ability, they can make decisions so you're not brought into every single meeting.
And so, by being a manager, you said that you had to change, you had to develop other skills. how did you go from configuring just a few modules to managing people who maybe configure or have expertise in other areas that maybe you're
Mhm.
not an expert in? What's your approach?
So I actually approached before I became manager, I got 8 Workday certifications across the entire system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did that because I wanted to truly be the best leader I could, because I believed that if I had the knowledge to help them and be more senior level and be kind of an advisor to them as to what to do, I would be more helpful. So that's what I did. But the prime example is I have a developer currently who would run laps around me any day if I tried to build an integration, and he will laugh at me when he tries to describe things to me. So I learned how to basically hire people that are smarter than yourself. That's number one.
Hmm.
And I hired him because he also knew how to speak to me in a way that I knew the functional side, but I didn't know technical. So when he goes into studio jargon, sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I really don't know, and sometimes I ask him intuitive questions. It just depends on the day.
Yeah.
But he was really good at bringing it to a level that I understood even as I wasn't a developer. So what I do with him is my management style is very different. I help him on more of the side of the cross-functional projects, the stakeholders, and
Mm.
working in the functional area. I don't teach him things about integrations, but what I do help is I remove a lot of roadblocks for him.
Oh, so that he can do his
So
job
he can
easier,
move at
faster.
100
Yeah.
miles, yep, per hour.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I
Love it.
can't run a studio integration to save my life. It's not my area of
Same.
expertise, and it never will be.
Same here. I've uh, I've been talking to a lot of HRIS managers, and I'm
Mhm.
starting to spot the differences between all of them, especially
Okay.
the ones who lead a good HRIS department, who lead a good
Hmm.
Workday department, one from the other. So, what is your advice for them? Because not everyone has that background with like 8 certifications and knowing pretty much a little bit everything about Workday. What's your advice for someone who maybe just became a manager after having a payroll career or payroll configuration experience?
So if they're responsible for the employee, your job is to honestly just make sure that Monday mornings don't suck for them. That is your job. It
Yeah.
really is like it's to be that partner to them and help enable them and understand what motivates them at the end of the day. Because if you don't have the expertise, you are going to rely on them. I always say educate yourself as much as you can. So like with
Hmm.
integrations, I know enough that I could build an integration if I had to, or I can back it up, or I educate myself enough to where when he's talking to me, he doesn't feel like he's talking to someone that has absolutely no idea what she's doing. So it's really about, I go back to just being a really good human. If you don't know the actual technical side of it, how can you help them in other ways?
Yeah. More on the soft skill area. I think just
Soft skills. Oh
being,
yeah.
yeah, being pleasant to work with. I think that's half or more than half of the job, and then the rest, I think you
Yeah.
can learn, just like you said. Yeah. And sometimes it's tricky with managers, so depending on who it is. Okay, that's perfect. Appreciate your background on this. Most of the people I talk to are independents, whatever. So when I'm talking to an HRIS manager, I take advantage of just asking a lot of questions. Um, and so let's go back to Workday a little bit. Tell me what makes a successful Workday department at any company.
Mm. I would say one that really actually knows about the business impact. And what I mean by that is you can know how to fix things, roll out new suites of tools or anything like that, but they actually know how to speak the language of business so someone cares about it. And it's even down to the analyst. Is it's hey, so I used to work on teams where we'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is really cool." And then people would have no idea what it was. So we never got anyone to email us back on it. We weren't
Hmm.
able to move forward with it. But it's really about the people that take ownership. And I work right now, like my team, we are the advisors, right? That's the way that people look at us is, "Hey, let's loop in this team so we know how we can move forward with this." And we're really seen as business partners. And I think that's all the difference is when you're no longer a service desk and you're
Hmm.
actually the business enablers. And technology is so powerful. And it really is the future, I think, of human resources. So you become the center of it. And if you can learn how to really articulate what you are trying to other people, you eventually will get what you want.
Definitely. Okay, I get it. So from my understanding, then you need to know to speak the language of business, and then especially when
Mhm.
you're selling ideas or selling new modules or new SKUs, etc., if you're not able to translate Workday terms to real business impact, I think it'll be hard to move along with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be an order taker. Like one of the
Yeah.
posts I had was like HRS is not a drive-through. And I feel this wholeheartedly because if you have a department where all they do is just take in the requests and then they do them and they check the box and they move forward, they don't ask questions. They don't ask why you need to do it in the first place. Should we even be doing it? Is this the best way to go about it? But it all comes down to culture and what that team is used to doing. Because I've worked for teams where other teams controlled technology
Hmm.
and they were practically our bosses. So we had to do what we were told of them. But the best individuals I have seen are the ones that don't do exactly what they're told.
Got it. And I like that.
It's
How's the
unconventional. It really is, but it works.
what is your approach then? What's the best setup? Like, is it putting Workday in HR's hands or like technology's hands, or from your experience, what did you see in the ecosystem?
I've been in both.
Both.
So,
Okay.
oh yeah. So I've reported into operations. I've reported into total rewards before. I've reported into CHROs, CEOs, the chief legal officer, chief product officer. I mean, we've really reported into a lot of different people, even like through my career. I think the best setup is under human resources because that person can be really the head of governance for you. When you
Hmm.
think about what an HRS director needs, it's someone that can override anything. They have the budget and they can make the decisions. So when you tuck HRS under, a VP that rolls into an SVP that rolls into a chief officer, there's so many different levels they have to get to be able to move things. So in smaller companies, when you're moving at such a fast pace, stick them under human resources. Now you put them under IT, that has its own challenges, unfortunately. So because IT's methodology is different than human resources, you've got completely different dynamics.
Hmm. And you're adding just layers and
Yeah.
hierarchies for approvals, etc. So makes everything else slower, I guess.
If your team is really struggling with governance, then I see rolling them into IT because you really do need security operations nailed down. You need intakes coming through, prioritizations. IT is really good for that. For example, if you want to start sprint methodology, HR is not really going to understand that as much.
Yeah.
But then you go into IT and you're back to being the service desk, I feel like. So when you're under HR, they're more invested. You want to be under the person that has the biggest bank account and has the most ability to get you guys to move fast.
Hmm. Okay. Okay, I love that. I think that's the way you explained it is very well for someone who's like an individual contributor, like an independent consultant, because
Hmm.
I've heard both ways,
Hmm.
but not really a good like opinion on which department is best. But appreciate you sharing this with us. If we move along in our workday discussion, I love one of your posts where you say that Workday isn't broken, like your process is, and I relate to it so much because many people just stop at the features that are not working or all of the things that are not working inside the tenant, but they don't think outside the tenant. Especially people implementing Workday for the first time, they're implementing whatever they were doing before, and then everything breaks because the process was broken. Tell me more about this philosophy and how do you tackle it, like in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Workday is just a big giant mirror to what is going on. So, for example, if you've got a late termination coming through and it's hitting the system and an auditor finds that, often enough they blame Workday, like why does Workday say this state? And it's like actually it's because there were 5 steps before it even hit Workday and the ball was dropped by someone who's no longer at the company. So now we have an issue down the road. So that's where Workday really starts to tell you, it tells you different things. It helps you collect the data. Being in this industry, I have found the quickest and easiest way to point fingers is on a system. they'll
Yeah.
they'll say, "Hey, this is broken." It's like, "No, actually, this is per policy that you have set up that you weren't aware of." And I just think sometimes it's pretty complex for people to understand.
And who's responsible for it then? Let's say that the termination BP
Hmm.
isn't working well.
Hmm.
Before even thinking about configuring or solving the BP itself, like where do we start?
I think it starts from that HRS director. And if they go to the right person and they say, hey, so this is what happened, an auditor found this, we need to change the entire process. And I know this because I've done this several different times and I have proposed brand new processes. Now, that's when you get in the business of kind of being operations and technology at the same time. But that's also what's going to make you stand out. So if you want
Hmm.
to be different than anyone else, I say start trying to own those processes and really how they should flow, create them, and then have the tech enable it.
Okay, more on that then. Let's say
Hmm.
that we want to avoid the system to, be broken, and then we want to work on the process. I think one of the best time is when you're implementing Workday for the first time. So
Yeah.
you're, looking at the mirror and you're just analyzing all of your processes, and then, you're implementing something new and fresh. You've implemented Workday from scratch before. What have been your experience, and what did you do really to implement that philosophy?
Yeah, they implement it as the policy is at that time. No, really, though.
Copy
I
paste.
mean, really, welcome to corporate America. They don't have time to go through every single policy to put it in the system because you need to get that system up and running in 8 months. So
Yeah.
how I've seen companies do it is we'll phase it. So we do, the most viable product where we are at that time, and then we start changing it, which is why I've done actually a lot more work on the after we've deployed
After go
phase
live.
X, that's where I do a lot of the revision to some of these processes because when you go in and it's kind of bare minimum, and plus if you're global, it completely changes all this because you have different nuances. Like in Germany, you have to, sign a letter before it actually you confirm the like different payments come through and for comp changes and things like that. Well, you can't key it in the system right away, technically. So
Hmm.
it starts to get really confusing. And unless you've got a really strong global team and different business partners throughout the company, it's very difficult. You're not going to go into it perfect. No way.
Yeah. And as a consultant, sometimes I try to poke the bear during the implementation. Like I
Yeah.
see something weird, I'm like, "Are you sure you want to implement it this way?" And then they're like, "Yeah, like that's how we do it in PeopleSoft, let's say." And then I'm like, "Hey, like it's maybe a good opportunity for you guys to speak about it and then maybe implement it a good way." Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just like you said, the implementation is the MVP, so sometimes we
Hmm.
just need to go fast, 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 and all of the work comes after the go live. But then after the go live, people just go back to their job, and then
And then
any
they
problems,
forget about it. And
Yeah,
what I've
exactly.
seen, so what I've tried to change is I see a lot of, and I've seen this on different teams, but we're so quick to like point fingers at other teams. We're like, no, they broke the process, they didn't do it right. And then it comes to tech and they're like, hey, it's not working. So that's the HRS director that like gets in trouble for it. And you're like, this is a process problem. So I think the best thing to do is recommend new process. And that's what I have to do a lot of when I see something broken is I go to the business owner, I say, hey, this is actually what we need to do. Does this work with our policy? And then we will
Hmm.
change the process. Now, not everyone has that capacity or maybe that skill set or really that desire, and they're just like, not my problem. That's fine. But you're not going to be a mover and shaker in the industry if you're also doing that.
Yeah. And how do you prioritize it? Because going back to one of
Mm.
your other posts, if you say yes to everything, then you're saying uh, it's too general, and then you don't know how to prioritize. So how do you prioritize maybe optimizing processes versus all of the other fires in your tenant?
So, I mean, before we even start the year, we typically have like 6 months out of projects that we at a bare minimum know we're going to do. So, say a process came up and we're like, hey, this comp change has to be completely redone. Then at that point, we would just basically use math to figure out how much of a priority it is. And I look at different elements of like employee experience. Is it payroll impacting? How are we going to weight the score? I kind of score it then from there, and then I prioritize all the different projects, and we work from critical basically to nice to have. We don't really get to nice to haves often at all, but it all depends on the priority scale. And then we from there typically do like I would say month long sprints. Like we don't do weekly or bi-weekly because our projects are
Hmm.
just they're so long. But it depends all on kind of the priority. And because I'm so embedded into HR, I typically know what everyone is making noise about.
Okay.
But again, just because the person's the loudest one in the room doesn't mean you're going to do their project right away.
True. And so at the end, then, how much is really Workday involved versus just outside strategy?
Yeah, like 10%.
10%, really?
Seriously.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Workday's like that small. Yeah.
Yeah.
Majority of the work as to why I see systems being the way they are, it actually has to do with the other teams not having the ability to look into the different processes and change them.
Hmm. And then
It's
that's
very
why,
little with tech.
yeah, and it's funny you're saying that because I feel like the companies who focus maybe 40% on Workday and 60% on their processes, let's say,
Oh,
they depend more on vendors to do their stuff
and
because everything keeps breaking, and so they always need external help to, keep working on the tenant. Whereas if they focused on their processes, maybe they would lower that Workday effort to 10%, just like you said. So I'm curious, from like all the companies that you worked with, have you worked with vendors a lot, or is your goal to own that on your internal team?
the goal has been to own it internally, but I still use partners like AMS
Okay.
support because
Yeah.
we're so complex and we don't have the ability to have people that really specialize in all the different modules, which is what we would need to not have an AMS partner right now.
Hmm.
I work for other companies where it's all fully in-house, but payroll's always been pretty much we've either had partners or we've had kind of an OSV run it as well because payroll in itself is a beast. And I've seen companies not want to hire an actual payroll expert to do it. But one
Yeah.
company, I worked for an investment bank that we actually had an exceptional payroll manager and we ran it in-house, like fully.
Okay.
The configuration we used Kanos for occasionally. So, I mean, at all the companies, they've had access into AMS partners. And I think that's really important too, because you've got the side of investment to this. I saw a post, I don't know how accurate it is, to be honest, but it was 80% of people go live without an internal HRS team,
Man, I think, well,
which I've
that's
seen.
logical. Yeah,
Yeah.
in my
But
head,
if
yeah.
you think about that, if majority of your issues are the processes, and then you don't also have the people to help with the tech, I think tech can actually drive a lot of processes.
Hmm.
That's why when I've
Yeah.
seen departments that collapse operations and technology, they're pretty effective and efficient because you have the person that's the expert in the technology and they have a vested interest also in operations.
Yeah. I've I've seen clients go live with like two or three people on the HR team
Oh,
handling Workday. Um,
try one. I've seen that
yeah.
too. One
Ah,
person, the
really?
whole
Wow.
system.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. But I wonder if it's like a money problem, maybe a focus problem. They don't take it seriously, or maybe it's just no budget. So I
In the
wonder,
same
like
with
every
education.
yeah, every company is different. From your experience, what's the best size versus employee headcount?
Oh, that is not a one size fits all because it depends on how many countries you operate and how many
Oh,
modules
true.
you
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
because I've seen companies that can get away with two or three people, but they only are in two countries. And then right now, I we're a team of four, and we have close to 40 different countries we're supporting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then some of it's inside, some of it's outside, and we have a partner trying to help us as well here too. So it depends on how much modules. It depends on your skills, your team skills as well.
Okay, so I'm curious about your setup then. What's the
Hmm.
flow of information? So let's say that country number six are seeing problems in the tenant. Do they
Hmm.
contact your team first or the partner first? Like how does it
They go to
work?
they go to business partners.
Okay. And
So
they
they go into
know
the business
what to do next. Okay.
partners. Yeah, and the business partners typically will reach out to technology and work with
Okay.
us internally. We rarely work with managers. I've worked at other companies where we helped with it, but it was actually because we had manager self-service. So that's where I saw HRS getting heavily involved
Hmm.
with helping with the different processes.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. From this conversation and from the last one we had, I think you told me that you're no longer configuring that much in a typical
Mhm.
week. Do you miss it or do you prefer the management part?
It comes and goes because some weeks I'm configuring 30%, some is 50%, and then sometimes
Mm,
it's 15%. And I'm working on
okay.
all the different processes instead. But I do miss it sometimes, but then after a merit cycle, I don't. So I handle all the steady state projects. So open enrollment, performance I build end to end still. It depends on how
Hmm.
complex it is, and then I'm heavily involved on the project management side of it. I do miss it here and there, but at the same time, I think that I can make impact elsewhere. And it's
Hmm.
not just my configuration anymore. It's how can I actually enable the company to use Workday? And that's it's an entirely different skill set, which has been
Oh
a new
yeah.
challenge and it's been really exciting.
I love it, and I personally admire it because that's the thing where I don't know. I didn't have that interest of going that route. That's why I just stayed within configuration. I just love configuration so much. That's why I asked you like
Mhm.
if you miss it or not. But yeah, yeah, it's a different skill set, and I think super valuable. And I'm seeing the difference between the HRIS manager who have it versus who don't.
Oh yeah,
Especially in the long term, like you've been live for many many years. I can see the state of your tenant reflects the HRIS manager or the department entirely. So
it does.
what's next for you, Danielle? What's your ambition? What's your goal within the ecosystem?
I think it's continuing to help enable other people to kind of speak up, speak their truth, and really lead teams and feel confident in doing so and being that strong voice behind it and helping people become more influential at their organization because that is, I think, sometimes more powerful than your
Hmm.
deep workday knowledge is knowing how to actually influence.
Yeah. Is there a workday area that you'd like more exposure or more experience on, maybe to help you in your job?
So I like change management and teaching, different stakeholders how to use workday. I think at some point I did definitely hit a ceiling with Workday and
Hmm.
configuration. I can keep doing it and it's fun and it's great. But at some point, I think there's more to it. And there's more
Yeah,
to enabling your teams. That's the work I like doing. Like I really like, for example, at one company, we were doing a big global payroll initiative and we were going to completely change out our vendors and redo all of our integrations and have brand new onboarding process. That's the stuff that I really like doing.
I see.
So yeah, way much larger, complex, a huge puzzle to basically solve is what I enjoy.
Yeah, and we've talked just about Workday, but like as an HRIS manager, there's so many other systems that you need to handle, and so
Yeah.
that's where the complexity comes in. Even the integrations, but even without the integrations, like how do you deploy those other tools to enable your team, as you said?
Yep.
No, I love it. Perfect. Well, appreciate you being on this episode, Danielle. It was super valuable, well, for me specifically, because as I said, like uh, I'm really focused on the configuration and how to deploy Workday as much as I
Hmm.
can. But then after the go live and all of the strategy behind it, I have not a lot of experience, so it was super valuable. I'm sure that a lot of listeners think the same thing. Think the same thing. So if someone has like any additional questions for you or want to continue this conversation offline, where can we find you?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn under Danielle DeMeo.
Cool. I'll leave a link in the show notes and on screen. And appreciate you again, Danielle, for being on this episode. Maybe we'll be